Insight into what it means and the sharpest opinion. There's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and there's this internet parable that is making the rounds again, in part because, thanks to AI, it's being voiced, in quotation marks, by like Denzel Washington, Jordan Peterson. There's different versions of it, so it feels new and it feels like it's important because they're this AI-generated voices that sound like people that you know. And, you know, internet parable, they don't quite rise to the quality of biblical parables, but nonetheless, they have, you know, pop culture cachet. The parable is about what happens after your funeral. Take a listen.
Do you know what happens after your funeral? In a few short hours, the crying will die down, and your family will be busy making arrangements for food or drink for your friends and relatives. Some of your relatives will start discussing current events over coffee, and some people will call your family to tell them that they can't make it in person because of an emergency. Some people will secretly start making travel arrangements because life is just too short. And someone in your family will start arguing that they contributed more financially to the funeral than others did. Eventually, the crowd is going to go their separate ways. And in the coming days and weeks, your cell phone might ring on occasion from people who didn't realize that you've died. Your employer will begin to search for your replacement. In a few days, your children will go back to work because their bereavement leave has run out. In a month, your spouse will be watching a comedy on TV and start to laugh. You'll be forgotten at an astonishing pace. Everyone's life will go back to normal. There'll be new elections, new scandals, and the traffic on the daily commute will be the same. And the Super Bowl will go on just as planned. Meanwhile, the first anniversary of your passing will be celebrated in a grand manner. But in the blink of an eye, years are going to have gone by, and there'll be very few people left to remember you. One day, looking at old photos, a friend might remember you. In your community, of the hundreds of people you became acquainted with, only one person may remember you and think about you sometime. Now tell me, if people will forget you so easily, then who are you living your life for? Who are you worried about? You spent your whole life worrying about what people will think about you. They don't. And they won't. So live your life for you.
Live your life for yourself, of course, got cut out there. I mean, it's depressing. I get that part about it. But, you know, it seems to insinuate like living your life as some navel-gazing solipsist that's just concerned with, you know, sort of pleasure and pay no mind to other regarding impacts. Vodi Bakum, the recently deceased Christian apologist, preacher, really good. He offered this riff on why he fights this spiritual war against the woke, as we were just discussing.
I go to war against this woke tyranny, number one, because there is a God who created the world, and he has spoken. And fallen man does not get to disagree with the God who has spoken. And I go to war against this woke tyranny because, number two, I love fallen men enough to tell them the truth. There is a God. He has spoken. He created man in his image, created him male and female. He gave us the beauty of the marital relationship as a living, breathing picture of the communion within the Godhead and of the relationship between Christ and his bride for whom he laid down his life. May God grant us grace to believe this truth, to proclaim this truth, and to reflect this truth so that a lost and dying world can hear it, flee from sin, and find salvation in Christ.
Yeah, I wish Vodi Bakum would go viral the way that some of these internet parables do. Because it seems to me it all redounds to the age-old question. You either believe in God or you believe you're God. And that what happens after your funeral thing feels to me very much like a call to believe you're God. Which I think is a pretty good segue to Charles Murray and his new work. Charles Murray, of course, is a famed social scientist. You know him from such celebrated works as Losing Ground, The Bell Curve, Coming Apart. His new book is Taking Religion Seriously. He is the Hayek Emeritus Scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Charles Murray, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Dan.
So you wrote recently about this in the Wall Street Journal. I read this piece you wrote in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, not about this specifically, but about this generally, the idea that humankind is more than our brains and our material desires.
That's right. I want, though, to say something about that parable you played. I listened to that, and I say, does this guy have no kids? Does he have no wife?
Yeah.
Doesn't he understand that for my father and mother died years and years ago, and they are still living presences for both me and my siblings and also their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I listened to that, and I said, this is not a person who has thought very seriously about what he wants to leave behind when he dies. And what you want to leave behind are what's called the obituary virtues, not your resume virtues. It has nothing to do with how much money you have. It's what kind of person you've been. Anyway, that's not necessarily religious. I just think that's a silly way of looking at death and how to measure the importance of human life.
And it's almost, I mean, if I could just digress with you for a moment too, it's almost sort of like, it's like a celebritized version of life. Like if I'm not remembered by everybody that I communicated with, if I don't still have sort of a preeminent standing in their minds and their daily lives, then somehow my life was misspent because I didn't do enough to make sure I'm permanently imprinted in their minds, and that means that you're living for recognition as opposed to living to, well, in my view, to give glory to God.
And I had exactly the same reaction. And look, I am not famous in the ordinary sense of the word. Nobody comes up to me when I'm eating a meal in a restaurant and asks for my autograph, but there has occasionally been times that people do know who I am in that kind of limited fame. And one of the things that most quickly came across was the first couple of times it happened that people said, oh, they're happy to meet me because they've heard so much about me. The first few times, it's pretty cool. And it gets old real fast. And I'm sure you've had the same kind of reaction. And what you realize is that fame, in the sense of people knowing who you are, is really trivial in comparison to the personal relationships you have with people in your lives.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. Well, this piece, this book, Taking Religion Seriously, I mean, you've had an evolution on this matter of religion because you went to college. So they tried to beat it out of you, and then you came back to it.
Well, yeah. So, look, when I got to college, maybe you had the same experience. I learned smart people don't believe that stuff anymore. And it wasn't they tried to persuade me of that. It was just in the air that it was taken for granted. Oh, that nobody really believes the Bible anymore and that sort of thing. And it was a long story, Dan, which I tell in the book. It's a very autobiographical book with my wife who set an example that I couldn't ignore, and I realized I was missing out. So the book is it's not a handbook, but it is written for people like me for whom religion just was simply not important for a long time. and how I finally came to realize it is important after all.
And the piece in the journal was interesting, too, because one of the ways you came at this, that sort of this formulation, were more than our brains, and science is catching up to this reality, and it's going to create a paradigm shift in our understanding of the human condition, and ultimately that human beings have souls. You talked about these near-death experiences and the lucidity incidents that come with near-death experiences, and what that tells us about what we don't maybe fully understand yet.
Yeah, I think that that science is in the situation right now. I should say that neuroscience is in the same situation that physics was a century ago. Namely, there are oddities and anomalies that current theory can't explain. And I think that the evidence that consciousness can exist independently of the brain, which is something I did not believe at all until a few years ago, I think that evidence just has to be taken seriously. And the near-death experiences is one source of that, of which there are a lot that have been carefully studied. And the same thing with what's called terminal lucidity, where people with advanced dementia, a day or two before their death, are back. They're back with their personalities and their memories, not for very long, and then they die. But how is that happening if they have brains that are physiologically incapable of organized thought? That science has to start taking that stuff seriously.
Another piece I read that folded into the book is and this is sort of your journey too, but I didn't think I needed God, and I turned out to be wrong. I mean, I think a lot of people listening probably know somebody in their life like that, if they're not that person themselves. And so the epiphany, the conversion experience, so to speak, what was it for you?
I'll tell you that I'm trying to point out to people there doesn't have to be a conversion moment. I'm kind of the equivalent of tone deaf when it comes to a lot of spiritual issues. And it doesn't mean that the music isn't beautiful. It means I have a hard time with my skill set of accessing it. And so instead of a road to Damascus sudden revelation, people like me, and there are lots of people like me, can find themselves very slowly over a period of time getting moved off an unreflective secularism and beginning to tap into this wealth of wisdom and inspiration that is in the great religious traditions, and for me, most powerfully in Christianity.
Right, and one of Christianity's best ambassadors, I think, had an impact on you, and I'm talking about the scholarship of C.S. Lewis.
Oh, well, that's the first thing I would say to listeners who say, gee, Murray sounds pretty much like me. Go read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, because I've got news for you. You will, in the first few pages, realize this is a very smart guy who still believes that stuff and can ask you questions in ways that will stick in your mind forever after. Mere Christianity is the book, and it's wonderful.
And ironically, of course, the C.S. Lewis's story is not dissimilar to yours in terms of where he started versus where he ended. He wasn't always C.S. Lewis as we know him today.
It was for him, I think, somewhat faster experience than it was for me. But he went from being an absolutely classic secular atheist. I was an agnostic. I wasn't hostile to religion. I just didn't think it was irrelevant to my life. And C.S. Lewis was much more aggressively an atheist in his youth. And he ends up being the 20th century's most successful writer in bringing people to Christianity.
And you mentioned your wife's impact. Can you develop that a little bit more?
Sure. She had our first child in 1985. And after a few months, she realized that she loved that child, as she put it, more than evolution required. She understands evolution. She understands women who don't love their babies don't pass their genes on. She felt that she was a conduit for something larger than that. So whereas I'm tone deaf to a lot of spiritual issues, she is she can fully appreciate the music. And it was that example, watching her over a period of years become more engaged in Quakerism, as it happens, and how that was enriching her life, that made me say to myself, you know what, you need to participate in this. And Dan, it's one more case of women socializing the men, thank God, and bringing us along.
Yes, no, that's right. They're supposed to be a civilizing influence, and we need them more now than ever. The Taking Religion Seriously, so that's the name of the book. So since you've been taking religion seriously, how has that impacted your intellectual pursuits, your thinking?
Well, I'm trying to come up with a quick answer to that. A lot of times I have found that I didn't realize I was changing my beliefs while it was going on, and I suddenly recognize how far I've moved. But one of the simplest things that I guess people who are growing older should know is that I'm 82, and I've been getting old without fearing death now ever since I got involved in this. Whereas when I was in my 40s and 50s, I would have moments of dread as I thought of oblivion and I'm dead and I'm no longer in the universe. And that has gone away. And that is no small thing, you know? And also, whereas I'm not a classic Christian in an Orthodox sense, I am convinced that the universe was created intentionally. And I think that the phrase God is love and the sense of God's grace, I think those are real concepts. So people like me may not have the same joys that other people can find in religion, but what I've just described is a lot.
Charles Murray is the Hayek Emeritus Scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. The new book, pick it up, Taking Religion Seriously. Charles Murray, always an honor to talk to you. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And Charles Murray joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago businesses. Your phone, internet, and IT should work well 24/7. But when it doesn't, who are you calling? An overseas help desk? If you want clear, reliable local experts, consider Access One. Access One has been powering Chicago businesses with secure, reliable IT solutions for over 30 years from our headquarters right here in the West Loop. Whether it's VoIP phones, dedicated internet, managed cybersecurity, cloud backups, or 24/7 support, Access One has you covered. Access One is Chicago-owned, Chicago-run, and serving thousands of companies from Naperville to the North Shore and everywhere in between. We're rated top 5% in customer satisfaction, a Better Business Bureau A+ rated business, and trusted by law firms, clinics, tech startups to manufacturers. Let's talk about making your IT work well. Call 800-804-8333 or visit AccessOneInc.com.